Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the Cloud Underground podcast. Of course, I am Laura, CEO and co-founder of Cloud Underground, and on today's episode, NATO and I sit down for an exclusive interview with Robbie Ferguson, who is the creator of NEMS Linux. NEMS Linux 1.6 was just released on January 28th. NEMS, of course, stands for Nagios Enterprise Monitoring Server, and it is a pre-configured Nagios image built to run on single-board computers like a Raspberry Pi, and it provides remote infrastructure monitoring primarily for servers, but it can be configured to monitor just about anything you want. Of course, NEMS 1.6 has a ton of cool new features, which we'll talk about with Robbie, as well as our love for all things open source and Robbie's other passion projects like Category5 Technology TV. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Thanks for joining us, Robbie. We're really excited to be here with you today.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks, NATO.
Yeah. So it seems like you've been doing this Category 5 Technology TV stuff for a while. I notice your YouTube channel is 10 years old. That's a pretty big accomplishment. Or 2012, I think. And I know you were working on it even before then. So can you tell us a little bit about, the origin of Category 5?
Category 5 TV. I started back in 2007. So before, we were streaming with a 320p webcam. We were working before HD video existed, and even before YouTube was a thing. YouTube existed right around the same time, but it wasn't yet like a household name, and we weren't really sure as broadcasters whether we cared about this new thing called YouTube. It just seemed like another site that you could put your videos on. But then later joined YouTube and started streaming there as well. So, but it's essentially Category 5 TV started up as a tech help show, so people could call in. It was a live broadcast at that time, and myself and later hosts, co-hosts with me would support the viewers. And then that grew into, it's been through several iterations in 15 seasons. We're about to hit our 16th season. So right now, we've grown to the point where our studio is fully augmented reality powered. We have studios from New York to our main studio in Ontario, Canada. We've got folks that join us from California. And because it's all augmented reality, it looks like we're all standing in the same room. So it's pretty neat tapping into some cool technology to bring our broadcast about. But the interesting thing about Category 5 is because it's like a teaching show, we see different gaps in the market, different questions that come in repeatedly, working with MSPs, working with other technicians, IT companies that are constantly asking the same things and having the same problems. And so then we decided, hey, let's turn this into something a little different. And we started building products. And those products are specifically birthed out of needs within the industry that we've detected and determined to be voids in the industry, and especially in the open source space, in the affordable services space, because a lot of enterprise stuff is very pricey. And we want to fill that gap. And we use Category 5 Technology TV as a way of supporting that as well, with tutorials and interaction with our viewers.
That actually brings some questions up for me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, because I have some questions. So, just so that all the viewers know, anyone who's been following anything that I do for a while, I'm definitely a tinkerer, and I find things that I want to start building with. And so, one of the things that we ended up finding Category 5 network with, and also NEMS Linux over, is that we have a series of challenges that we've had across building new technologies for people, building businesses, and we needed a way to be able to test hardware, and we discovered Pinecraft. And
yes.
In terms of having ways to test, how do you test multi-tenant server architectures? How do you test hosting things? How do you test, how powerful something's going to be? You have to have applications and ways to do that. So, what are some of the things that got you into, because you have NEMS Linux, you have Pinecraft and all these things. What are some of those things that sparked you as a creator of whoa, this is just what I have to do these things? Because I know for me, I'm a person who has to tinker, but what got you there?
Yeah, well, NEMS Linux is kind of the grandfather of all things that we've brought out because NEMS Linux has been around since first release was 2016. So it was kind of the first of these types of products. Pinecraft, though, is a little different because it's not so geared toward the industrial enterprise user. It's geared toward gamers, parents, grandparents, folks that want to set up a cheap way. I mean, so how does it come about? It comes about from a need, right? It always comes from there's a need, and so I, as a father of 3 children, the need arose that the kids are begging to have a Minecraft server. So if the kids want a Minecraft server, I've got a couple of options. There are some commercial products out, commercial service providers like SaaS providers of these servers out there. But I started seeing, reviews of, okay, well, people, maybe didn't pay their bill one month. And so then all of the kids' builds got destroyed, deleted from the servers. And it's like, no, that's heartbreaking. And then I saw other ones that similar kind of scenario, the kids spent a lot of time working on it. And then the company folded because, for whatever reason. And so then the kids lost all their builds. And so it's like, okay, there's got to be a way to make this something that we can self-host, and there's got to be a way to do it for cheap. So Pinecraft is the culmination of that, where I turned a Raspberry Pi single board computer into a high performance Minecraft server. So it's fully optimized, overclocked automatically out of the box with safe overclock settings that won't void the Raspberry Pi warranty, but will maximize the performance of the game server. And then that is just, it's taken off because people love it because it's a free service. They can download it for free off of GitHub. They can look at the source code. They can turn any Raspberry Pi into a Minecraft server.
So I think this kind of transitions nicely into one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Robbie, which is the open source market. Like, what got you interested and excited about working with open source tools? Because it seems like a lot of the Category5 Technology TV videos, most of them, or a lot of them, are about open source tools and how to use open source tools.
Yeah.
What draws you to that?
It's no secret that I love open source and I love supporting communities. And that really plays into it. So am I one of those advocates for open source that refuses to use Microsoft Windows and Microsoft products and closed source products? No, that's not me, because I'm also practical and I realize that there's a need for closed source. There's a need for proprietary, and working with business especially, I see that. So, but I also believe that there are people that share the mindset that I have, which is, hey, if I know how to turn my Raspberry Pi into a Minecraft server, why don't I just give away that knowledge for free? There's other people out there that have that same kind of mentality that, hey, I might as well share it. That's exactly how NEMS Linux started. Was I realized after 10 years of using Nagios that it was a pain in the... So because of that, I wanted to make it really easy. I built my own on a Raspberry Pi. So what did I do? I imaged it and I put it online for people to download for free. And I think originally it was from my Google Drive. So like it really just, Laura, it comes from my realization that there's other project creators out there that have that mentality, that we're just, there's so many different types of mindsets in the space, but it's really about giving back to community and giving knowledge for other people to enjoy and learn. And I think about my kids, and that's a real eye opener for me, because I want them to be raised in a world with a mindset that, hey, I can learn safely from other people that are more knowledgeable than me in this field. I want them to be able to look over my source code and see how I did it. And I want them to be able to improve upon some of my own shortcomings. And so that's a big part of it. But so I just support that mentality. And that's what open source is to me.
That's awesome.
Open source is a magical thing. So some context for viewers on anyone who's been following us and you've maybe heard of NEMS Linux. There is NEMS Linux 1.6 on the way. It's coming. But how do we even discover NEMS in the first place? was through our community and through a lot of the same sorts of themes that you're talking about, Robbie. Like, so I come from building logging systems for security, and what I started doing is I was like, well, let's build little free tools, and we were using like Kali Linux containers because Kali Linux is free, and Kali Linux on Raspberry Pi and that sort of a thing. Like, hey, look, you can monitor certain things on your network with Nmap, and you can do these little things. But then it turned into like people had the same questions, and so we're showing how to configure the same thing, and then it's time after time, and then they're like, well, we want to know how to log lots of things, and it's like, okay, so now it's like building the same logging structure over and over and over again until one of my community members one day, and they ended up working at one of the companies who I stopped working with once upon a time long ago, but they found NEMS Linux, and NEMS Linux turned into like their whole career. Where they were like,
I'm the developer and I haven't even got to that place yet.
Oh man, yeah, it's funny, and we're like the host of the community, and we haven't even gotten to like quite that 100% thing. And so we started using NEMS Linux, and we're like, well, we'll just do this because it's our member found it, and it saves us so much time for people to just start logging and just start doing these things that we're just doing over and over again. And now it's building careers for people, and here we are today. So with NEMS, I guess the journey of NEMS, what has it felt like going from when you first started working with NEMS to now you're getting into a huge, really huge release?
Yeah. Oh, 1.6 is massive. I'm so excited about it. I've been running 1.6 for about 2 years on my own system and developing it. And so seeing it come to fruition now, and the pandemic kind of had setback after setback and everything else. So, but wow. First of all, I got to talk about just real quick. I got to say, with the thought of people building careers around NEMS Linux, I love that. And I see that, and it's really cool because I give it away for free. And so that's the mentality. So sometimes we start to see open source projects like NEMS Linux where we have a Patreon page and we have abilities to contribute financially to help the developer to build it. And so I must say, for myself and for other open source developers out there, that, hey, if you're building a business around this, or if it's saving your business a lot of money, then please support the development by becoming a patron, by becoming a partner or a sponsor. It's a really great thing to do. And I mean, I do the same thing, because as soon as I find a project that saves me a boatload of time and money, it's like, okay, I got to support that. I've got to help them to survive and make ends meet. And I want to turn this into a career. That would be the dream. So, but so sorry, I was kind of sidetracked there because I had, with what you're saying, Nato, I really wanted to touch on that. Can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah. So like when it went, I guess the question is, how did it feel when you first started out building NEMS Linux, when it was just a first idea all the way to now, like getting to rolling out this huge update?
It's so exciting. So NEMS started because just like Pinecraft, it was something that I was doing for myself, right? I was running a small IT firm with my wife, and we were a struggling little IT firm that we did technical support for local companies, and we were doing on-site service. And one of the struggles that I had is that I had no way of knowing if something was wrong at the customer site until they contacted me to tell me that. And so back then, I mean, we're talking 2006 is the time frame here. There weren't really a lot of tools out there that you could tap into like you can now. But knowing some open source projects out there, I got into Nagios, and that became my solution. So I started using that at all my client sites. And like you, Nato, it's like rebuilding the wheel every single time. You're reinventing something that is, you've already done 10 times. So it was a lot of work to get up and running. Nagios is a beast. It's an amazing product. You'll even see, if you're thinking, oh, Nagios has some bad reviews and stuff, you'll see those kinds of things because it's a beast. It's always been a beast. And it's open source. So the support support comes from where? The community, right? So, I mean, you can pay for professional support, but if you're looking for a free product, you're probably not going to get commercial support for free. You got to pay for it. So what happens is you start to see reviews on things like Nagios where, oh, I hated it because of this. And, I switched to this commercial product and started paying because Nagios was this. And so it's like, it's important to kind of realize, oh, okay, well, that's why those reviews are there, because we're dealing with a whole different space. But so having used it for about 10 years at that time and learning it inside and out, then I got to the point where I was deploying so many Nagios servers for every single customer site. And what we were doing at the time was repurposing old, like, PowerEdge rack mount servers that were old FTP servers that didn't have a purpose anymore. And we're running these things that are, they're like in the server room, right?
Yeah.
And they're using a boatload of electricity, and they're and this is our Nagios server. Because that's what you do. You repurpose old hardware, right? And then I had a viewer who sent me my very first Raspberry Pi microcomputer. Because the viewer was like, dude, this is right up your alley. You need to check out this new thing called single board computing. And this was a brand new thing at the time. So I did nothing with it because I didn't know what the heck to do with a Raspberry Pi. I hadn't made the connection yet. But then a full year later, I had this Raspberry Pi sitting there on my shelf. I didn't know what I was ever going to do with it. I didn't see a use for it. It's just a low-powered little computer. And then it clicked. And I thought, wait a second. If I were to create an appliance that I could replicate and put on these little single board computers that at that time, I'm so sorry to have to break this to you folks, all you kiddies out there that are just getting into the space. Raspberry Pis used to be $25. Okay. So back when I was your age, they were $25. And so I could get a whole box full of Raspberry Pis for a couple $100. And so what I did is I created my first NEMS Linux image, which was a micro SD card, I think an SD card at that time. And I replicated it, and I had it on all these boards, and then I deployed it at all my customers. So then I was using it. So then out of that, I started tweaking it, improving it, making it better. And then I released it to the public on my blog, and I talked about it on my show. And my show at the time was doing really well. And so all of a sudden I've got 150,000 downloads and all these support requests for this thing I gave away for free.
Totally.
So then it's been a learning process of figuring out, okay, how do I support this? How do I support the community? I did things like creating a Discord server for community support. That's been fantastic. I've got some wonderful community members. Bill Marshall is instrumental in making, he's our community ambassador and just taking care of making sure that if any redundant questions get asked, that he points them to the right documentation. He refers people to me if there's a problem that I need to solve, code bug or something like that. And then I work with him to, and our community to try to help as many people as we can. But all the while, I'm working behind the scenes, programming, making new features, answering feature requests, kind of like the quiet hacker in the background.
Totally.
Like there are times where I realize that my patrons probably think I've dropped off the face of the earth. And then suddenly, boom, I release like this major new release. And it's like, well, I'm not going to send you the change logs every day.
Right, totally. Yeah.
I'm not going to be the spammer that like sends you a note every time I make a change to the back end. I'm not going to see for another 2 years. Yeah. So it's tough. It's finding a balance with, I'm giving away a free product. I'm spending time evenings and weekends to make this happen. I'm getting up at 4 a.m. some days during the heavy parts of the release cycle so that I can get in a few hours before I start my day job and then coming back to it. So with 1.6 though, 1.5.2 was released. 1.5, the previous iteration of NEMS Linux was released about 3 years ago. And 2 years ago, a little under 3 years ago, I started working on NEMS 1.6 as a major overhaul of the system. And that's what's released on, I'm not sure when this video is going to be released, but on January 28th, 2023, you'll find NEMS Linux 1.6 available for free download for Raspberry Pi on our website.
So what are some of the new features that people can expect in the new 1.6 release?
Okay, so going back 2 years since I started feature coding, NEMS Linux has always had a really unique feature, which is called NEMS Migrator. This custom code that I developed because one of the things that I saw in Nagios was a real disconnect during migration processes. So Nagios itself makes it very difficult to move from one system to another, migrate your data, because everything's done in config files. And if you're using something like nconf to manage it, then it's a database in addition to that. And there's such an onerous process to migrating your Nagios server from one device to another. So NEMS Migrator has been hugely improved for 1.6. And what it does is it allows you to, so it creates a backup regularly of your NEMS server all the time. This is all your Nagios configuration, everything to do with your NEMS server. So all of your customer endpoints that are being checked regularly, your notification settings, everything. It saves that to a file, and then you can download that through Samba. You can download that from the web interface on the dashboard, or you can subscribe for what's called NEMS Cloud Services, which will then take your migrator backup and it will back it up to the cloud so that you can then restore from the cloud later. So if you're running an old version of NEMS Linux and then you want to upgrade to 1.6, you'd simply deploy 1.6 and then restore your NEMS backup from migrator. So boom, your 1.6 now has all of your endpoints, all of your configuration, all your notifications, everything. But what's really cool about this is you can start. And hear me out on this, because NEMS Linux is a free product. It's open source, right? So you could download the Raspberry Pi image, put it on your Raspberry Pi, absolutely free, get your configuration going, add all your customers if you're an MSP or an IT company, get it monitoring, get it tweaked the way you love it, figure out whether you love this or not. And so far, our price has been $0, right? And then you say, holy cow, I haven't had to purchase an Armon service from any of the SaaS providers that are out there, like Kaseya, for example, and that will charge me $3,000, $4,000 a month.
Oh, yes.
And I'm doing it for free on a Raspberry Pi. But my boss says that we can't use a Raspberry Pi in the data center because it's like a hobbyist. So we take our NEMS Migrator backup off of that Raspberry Pi, and then we spin up a enterprise virtual appliance or a NEMS cloud instance. And we can actually then boot into our new NEMS server, which is enterprise ready, import our NEMS Migrator backup from the Raspberry Pi, and we're up and running.
Wow.
I love that. Some exciting stuff like that. We're going to be using that migrator just so that everyone watching is aware. We're going to be talking about these things. We're going to show off how some of that works ourselves.
And how we use NEMS. And yeah, exactly.
I can't wait to see that too. I look forward to seeing it because NEMS, so my slogan has become, and has been for some time, monitor everything. Because the fact is that from use case to use case, how I use NEMS is completely different than how you might use NEMS. I have users who are monitoring the moisture using an Arduino moisture sensor connected to
I know what you're talking about.
Of their plants.
That's so cool.
So they get a Nagios alert or a Telegram message, or they get a webhook notification when they need to water their plants.
That's so cool.
That's so good.
So, I mean, go for it, whatever. Yeah. That's not how I use NEMS Linux, but, so in my data center, I'm using it to monitor all of my servers, all of my client endpoints, and I can put this on I can point it to every single computer that I'm monitoring, and it will give me proactive. So because I just realized we haven't even said what NEMS does yet. Nagios.
That's true.
Nagios Enterprise Monitoring Server. So think of remote monitoring, proactive knowledge for your IT team to know, hey, a hard drive is failing, or a hard drive is full on your server and it's causing problems. Your var folder is full on a particular server, or a server has gone offline. or some other kind of catastrophic thing. That's how I use NEMS. I'm using it to monitor servers and endpoints. But you can use it to monitor your plants if you want. That's fine.
We're using it to monitor this stream right now.
Perfect. Yeah. So one of the key features, so Migrator has been improved with NEMS 1.6. One of the key new features that I absolutely love and understand 2 years of development has gone into NEMS 1.6 since 1.5. So there's a lot of, I can't even summarize how much has gone into it. A lot of it's just improvements and things. But another need that I saw in the community was to simplify the monitoring process. So in other words, I want to make it easier to be able to add all those endpoints. All of my servers, I've got a massive server farm when it comes to my cloud infrastructure, and I need to be able to check all the time. I need to know if my backups are running low on disk space. I need to know all these servers and how they're running, how they're doing. Plus, I've got websites that are running on various cloud instance servers. I used to use shared hosting. Now I pretty much deploy an individual cloud instance of Apache LAMP stack for every server every website that I'm running, just because of the shared the various resources that are required. So I want to make it really, really easy without having to, okay, you guys know about nsconfig and having to use like all kinds of tools to monitor these servers, and it gets pretty complicated. So what I did is I created a tool, NEMS PHP checks, and I could actually share my screen. Is that something I could do to show you?
Yeah, you can share your screen. Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
definitely.
I'd love to show you. So I'm gonna see about sharing my screen here, and then I'm gonna bring up my very own NEMS Linux server. And so this is NEMS Linux on my network, and you'll see that this is actually running on a Raspberry Pi 3B. So that's the minimum requirement for the board. But what I want to do is I want to go into System Settings tool, NEMS SST. And from within System Settings tool, I have this really cool option in 1.6 that is my PHP agent. So I enter my encryption and decryption passphrase, and then I simply download a PHP file. And that literally is just a NEMS agent.php file. So now all I have to do is just pop that NEMS agent.php file on any LAMP server, or just a PHP server in general. And that's going to now allow me to monitor it from this NEMS server because I've got the decryption passphrase, which is going to match. So now
that's amazing.
To show you how that looks on my end. So if I want to actually monitor that, which I do, you'll see I'm monitoring a handful of servers. So I'm going to show you a couple of the different tools here. This is a Nagios. This is where I go to monitor and see, how things are going. What's going on? I see a couple of warnings there, so I can kind of get into that and see what's going on. It's showing me that my room temperature is pretty warm here on the bridge because I've got lights all around me, and it is indeed getting pretty warm in here. So I have a USB thermal sensor called a temper device, just simply plugged into my Raspberry Pi, and that immediately gives me thermal data for the room. So now that I've got that in a Nagios, I can click on it and I can say, okay, I'm going to acknowledge this. It's getting hot in here. Acknowledge the problem. Now it's acknowledged, and the problem is not going to alert me any longer
Nice.
because I'm getting emails, I'm getting push notifications. However, I've got the notifications set up, it's going to let me know. But so jumping over to one of my servers, let's say my PowerEdge. See, I've taken a bit of a lazy approach to my in-house Debian server. I just installed PHP 7.3 and I slapped that NEMS agent.php file on there just so I can see what the system load looks like. So if I go into services, I can see my PowerEdge load average is 0. That's good. But that's as easy. So I took the easy way out and used the PHP agent by slapping it in there. And then I just point to it, and I'll show you that. Here I've got, let's say, my cloud services disk. So the system disk. I want to know how full it is. So I can see my root partition, root mount point on the server is at 11.12% disk usage. So if it gets outside of a threshold, it's going to notify me. I can also go back in time and I can see the history. Well, how has it been? The disk usage has been pretty consistent here. But when it comes to things like thermal data, or like if you're actually experiencing a problem, it's kind of cool to be able to actually go back in time and see the history of this too. It's been warm in here all afternoon, I'm going to tell you.
Servers.
Right? So what I'm going to do is I just jump over here and I click on, so this is NEMS configurator. This is also available under the configuration menu. So this is where I configure NEMS Linux checks. And I can see things like the bridge room temperature. The bridge is the name of our production studio. That's just what we call it. So here is my PowerEdge load average. So you'll see that when I set this up, all I did is I selected the NEMS PHP agent as my check. I selected the PowerEdge server as my host that I'm going to check, which is under hosts. And I've told it I want to check this load average every 24/7, and I want to notify myself based on these criteria. And here's the magic. So the warning threshold, if my load gets over 10, it's going to switch to warning. If my critical, if my load gets over 16, it's going to be critical. And here's the magic here. So you'll see I'm actually pointing to what? An internal IP address /nems-agent.php. So this can be my WordPress site.com/nemsagent.php. Or if you want to use security through obscurity, my WordPress site.com/the file that I named it .php. Right? So that's just where the agent is that I downloaded from SST earlier. And then I've got all the checks so my final argument is, what check do you want to use? Memory, disk, and you can include the path, the network usage, network receive, network transmission, and system load. So you just simply specify that there, hit submit to save it, and then generate your config. And it's going to be monitoring that server with that information for system load. So for any of those servers, I just slap that PHP file on and I'm done. So it's all about just like making it super, super easy. And the PHP agent is a big part of that in NEMS 1.6. It just makes it so easy breezy.
Such a time saver. Honestly, like anyone who's spent time with logging systems, this stuff normally takes like months or in some cases years for large companies.
If you're an MSP, if you're an MSP and you're having to deploy monitoring at every customer site and you want to save money, okay? Because sure, there are big SaaS organizations out there that will literally charge you $4,000 a month. And that's fine for some organizations, but then there are, I think about nonprofits, school boards, maybe townships, and, organizations like that. Or maybe you're just you don't want to have to move that cost off onto your customer. Anyone who's ever worked in the MSP space knows that there's a lot of value in compartmentalizing your services and saying, okay, we're going to charge you X number of dollars for each endpoint that we're monitoring and protecting for you. So then you just bundle everything together. So if you're using something like NEMS Linux as your ARMON, you can provide remote monitoring services to those endpoints and those clients. You're giving proactive services to those clients. It's value add for them, but your cost is essentially $0 unless you go with one of our enterprise solutions or decide to support the project through Patreon.
And then people can afford to tip. And then one thing I love about that is even if you're supporting a community project like this, let's say that a business is like doing like a monthly payment program or something, or just supporting you through the Patreon, and then they have a catastrophic company event. Oftentimes, like companies can't just get rid of all their for compliance purposes, they'll like end up getting compliance fines and things like that. But you can just temporarily pause whatever payments you're doing. Unlike if you're using Splunk is going to be like, well, you're going to get those compliance fines and you're going to pay the maximum bill. And if you go out of business, Splunk doesn't care. So
yeah. So my model is very different. Like as far as looking at NEMS from the business perspective, because this is very much a business tool, enterprise grade remote monitoring, and of course the notification system. But The model that I tend to follow, I really admire companies like Epic Games with Unreal Engine.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal
Totally.
Engine is an awesome product, but their licensing model is this, and it's so simple to follow. We're going to give it to you for free. Once your product that you create on our product makes you $1 million, we're going to charge you.
I love that.
So everybody can learn the product. Everyone can get good at the product. If you decide you don't like the product, you can remove it and you never had to pay anything. But if you find that it's a great tool, it's going to build your business, you're going to be able to build a business out of it, you then have to pay them for the service. So I take that approach. I don't enforce that approach. So our approach is more use the product absolutely free. Once you find that you want to use it at the enterprise level, you're probably going to want to upgrade to one of the enterprise options. And those incur expense because they're cloud hosted servers and things like that. Our cloud instances are a unique subdomain that you receive that has your very own cloud hosted NEMS server, for example, running 1.6. That is available now before the public release is even out there. Or we have virtual appliances and everything else. So it's like that progression of we're using that free model where it is absolutely free. But if you want to use this, if you grow it to the point where you need to use it in your business, then it's a paid product at that point.
That's huge because, when some people are just trying to learn, they might be like a high school kid or a student in college and they have like nothing. But then people do start, because these skills are valuable. So for anyone who's wondering like, well, what can you do with logging skills? It's because I come from working with security, information, event management technologies. So like that's the security side. So if you're using like security use cases, then that would be the sort of thing that I built a lot of our career on. But then as you're doing stuff, it becomes easier and easier to afford supporting whoever you want to work with. And so it's worth it. It's worth paying for things.
Yeah, when you find a good tool, especially, support the creators.
Please send money.
And then if you ever become a creator, you'll understand.
Yeah. So I also do some fun geeky stuff too. Like I've worked with Chris Carey to bring what they call, let's see here, I'm going to bring it up. I think it's Nagios TV is the name of it. But on my NEMS server, he's talking to me. So he's actually telling me what is going on. This is what's up on my screen.
Oh, nice.
So this is full screen on a TV in our studio that I can see what's going on. I can see in real time everything that's going on my network if there's any problems. Totally. So it's all real time. You can see the checks happening. And if something happens, if you've got audio enabled, which I do, which is why I had to remove my headphone there for a second, it actually says aloud the notification. So it'll tell me that the temperature is in a warning state, for example. So this is all kind
awesome.
of
you don't even have to think about it. It'll just speak right to you.
So just a direct use case is we use the Nagios TV thing because it does have that audio thing. So like when we're streaming and we have like a drop on our network, we have our volume up so that it starts yelling at us so that we know that people aren't able to see us, like network offline. So we'll have it yell that out so that we're like, oh, no one.
You won't get your email if the network is offline.
Exactly. Yeah. And occasionally we'll be like sitting on the living room and like NEMS will be talking to us.
Yeah. So what happens? Like what happens in a case where your internet goes down and so you're not going to get any of your NEMS Linux notifications, right? So that's where either the cloud services come in or you can tap into what's called NEMS check-in. So in your NEMS server, there is a service called NEMS check-in, and you just enter your email address that you want to receive check-in notifications at and the threshold. And so then once you enable that, it's going to ping the cloud server on a recurring schedule. And if it doesn't check in within the threshold that you've specified, it will send you an email. So nice. Most people have access to so you put like your mobile email address that's on your phone so that you get a notification that says my NEMS server's off, which in that instance, I know, the internet must be down at that site unless I'm running a Raspberry Pi, maybe the SD card has failed or something like that. So, So there's like all these layers to it. So
it's super helpful. The alternatives tend to cost thousands of dollars.
yes.
Thousands. And if you're new and you're trying to start like your first like technical managed service provider, so we right now we have folks starting managed service providers, and some folks have like almost no budget, and some folks it's a side thing, and then so it's a great way to just kind of get into it. It's not going to punish you like trying to learn Splunk or trying to learn some of these other things. If you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of these other solutions make more sense. But if you don't, you can do so.
I beg to differ. If you have hundreds of thousands of dollars,
I don't know that necessarily means you should do any of that.
You'll probably benefit from this just as much.
Maybe we can work out a deal.
Exactly.
Keep your profits. Honestly,
I'm sure you'd love to create an individual solution for those people.
Yes, exactly.
That's a good point. It'll keep up support. If you have a big environment. It is enterprise, so
absolutely.
It's scalable. And that brings me to, that's an interesting point that you make, Nato, because the question starts to come up. Well, most of these remote monitoring tools are scalable, but you pay more with the scale of your network.
Yes.
Usually on a seat by seat basis, which can be frustrating as far as I'm concerned. If I add an endpoint and then remove an endpoint, and then I got to figure out the seat days and how I'm going to bill the customer, and it's a nightmare. So with NEMS Linux, it's unlimited. You can run as many as your Raspberry Pi can handle, but know that, of course, a Raspberry Pi has finite resources. So if you're going to have it running for a big network, probably go with a Pi 4 with 8 gigs of RAM. Just to get you there, use a USB hard drive. It'll boot from USB. So that way it's more reliable than an SD card. Or scale up to one of the larger solutions like virtualization or the cloud instance as well. But the scalability is only limited by the architecture and the platform that you're running it on. I don't put any caps on the software. There are no, if you get to 100 seats, then I'm going to start charging your credit card. There's nothing like that. It's very much just scale it up as you desire. And I'm as much a hobbyist as the next guy. And I'm just like bringing out new features for you and improving the service as we go, making it better and better.
The statement to, if we do have any enterprise, because we're starting to get more enterprise viewers these days, if you are an enterprise viewer who's watching this, one thing that you have potentially run into, whether it was working with me or not with me in general, if you work in cloud, unexpected, just like huge spikes where you're working with a logging environment and then you suddenly have like a $200,000 random bill out of nowhere. Ouch. You're not going to have unexpected random bills when you're using these types of approaches. You can still hit your numbers, you can still meet your compliance, you can still meet your governance. And if you're using the enterprise NEMS resources, it's still going to cost money, but you're not going to get like a disaster surprise. And so we see all these layoffs coming off. I've seen direct situations where companies get like, unexpected $200,000, and they're like, who are we going to lay off? So you don't have to lay off your team. Instead, you can keep your teammates. It's a thing.
Yes, use open source tools. Yes,
and use NEMS to grow. Use NEMS to grow.
Yes.
Like I say, it adds proactive monitoring to your service offering. There is value in that. For a customer to know that you are monitoring all of their endpoints 24/7, that you have 24/7 notifications and response to their issues. Hey, I encourage you as sysadmins, be proactive. Like when you get a NEMS notification that a hard drive is full or something, call that customer up and say, hey, we noticed that there's a problem on that hard drive. Because as soon as they realize that, wow, these guys are proactive, I didn't even have to pick up the phone and call them. I didn't even realize that server was offline, right? Then you've just added value to using you as their service provider. I had customers whose company website was down, and they didn't know that their company website was down until a customer phoned them to tell them. And that's a big problem.
That's always bad.
Well, speaking of being... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just want, because we were talking, NATO had talked about the multiple enterprise solutions and how it never goes up in price. So understand The two options that are currently available with 1.6 are the virtual appliance. So that is on your own hardware. So that virtual appliance is going to sit on your hypervisor. It's available as an OVA, which is compatible with, ESXi or whatever else, even VirtualBox. It's a VHD download as well, which is, that's great for Hyper-V. Or there's also a QCOW2 file, which works very well with Proxmox hypervisors, which Proxmox is freely available. There's a free version. So there's a lot of scalability there, but it's reliant on your own physical infrastructure for the for the hypervisor. And then the next option, of course, is the cloud instance service, which is a hosted solution that gives you a subdomain off of our site that you can go to anytime to have cloud access to your NEMS server. You can monitor it from anywhere. You can bring it up on your phone. You can do it from anywhere. And that is virtual hardware on our cloud services, which are capped at the hardware level. So if you ever get to the point where you've grown way past the what you're paying for, basically, we don't cut you off. We don't charge you more. It's just, hey, you probably want to, we'll notify you that you want to probably add a few more gigs of RAM to that server or something like that. So it's very much a relationship. We're working with you. And because if you get to that scale, it's like Unreal Engine. You get to the point where you're making $1 million, you can pay a couple thousand for the product.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's very true. And then if anyone's trying to figure out how to get a scalable hypervisor that you're not going to be paying a lot of money, like vSphere, things like that, we actually created something called the Underground Nexus. The Underground Nexus is technically what's referred to as like a hardened. So it's technically a hyper-converged data center, but it's basically a hardened hypervisor that builds configurations for you, so that the journey for getting your hypervisor ready, so you could set up your NEMS virtual appliance, something along those lines. That's an optional tool that people can use that'll do a lot of those, especially if you have compliance and you need your configurations to be compliant.
Install Underground Nexus and use NEMS.
Toss
to
NEMS
monitor.
in there.
Yes.
And it does give you a centralized space where it's easier to make sure that you know where all your logs are supposed to head to. Send them over to the Underground Nexus, and then all of your logs will be right there for NEMS to just chew on all that data.
We love chewing on logs.
Yes. So I wanted to talk to you more, Robbie, about some of your other hobby projects. Of course, because I think we're all hobbyists to a certain extent, and that's a lot of where the things that we built come from. I know for us, the Underground Nexus was kind of a labor of love as well. So I want to hear what other kind of projects you've got out there that people can go check out.
Oh, wow. Just like that. Category 5 is the big one.
Yeah.
So anytime I have time when I'm not doing NEMS Linux and everything else, Pinecraft doesn't take a lot of time. Microsoft brings out a new version of the server every few months, and I have to update it and everything, and I keep it up to date. But it's basically a once a week kind of look at the code and patch things. But otherwise works very, very well. NEMS Linux is the biggest one, and then Category 5, when I have free time, I build this show. So we just have a lot of fun with it. We have a great studio in Ontario, Canada. We do video productions for other companies, but when we have the chance, we're doing video production for ourselves in the tech ed space. So
cool.
We answer questions. We teach people how to use technology, Maker Tech. We've obviously talked a fair bit about Raspberry Pis today, but other single board computers as well. We looked at a Vim 4 from Catus, one of their new boards, and compared it to some other things that are on the market. We look at Odroids. And so we just love just bringing new products to market through our program. But we do it, I mentioned earlier, we do it in a unique way using augmented reality. So that's a heck of a lot of fun. And so, as far as hobbies go, that's a big one. It's like, I'm learning how to do virtual production. I mean, I've got to my right here is my virtual reality headset that lets us actually enter our studio in VR.
That's so
it's
cool.
pretty amazing to see
that's
the content you've
that's
made.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was watching
magical.
a bunch of your videos, kind of in preparation for this. And one thing I noticed is that I think it was it just season 15, but you like die at the end of every video. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like where that idea came from, what other fun
It
things?
was my wife's idea. We were looking for a shtick. We were looking for, okay, as YouTubers, we want viewers to stick around to the end because that's where, it's no secret. And folks, if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, YouTubers are the worst because they're always saying like and subscribe. It really matters because it's a way to support them and what they're doing, because we give away free content. We give away our time for free. We don't make what you think we make. Just because Mr. Beast does well for himself doesn't mean everyone else is. It's
true.
It's hard going, and it costs a lot more than it makes. So, the idea behind the shtick was we want something that's going to keep them around till the end. And so at the end of every show, it became the idea that, okay, Robbie's going to die. And it's like, what? What do you mean I'm going to die at the end of every show? So because we're in a virtual reality space, we can do anything. So our first episode within the VR space was about Pinecraft. And so all throughout the episode, there's a threat of a creeper walking around. And this creeper goes in front of the camera, and you see him kind of in the periphery, and then he's on an island and he kills Henry. And so all this stuff is going on. And then finally at the end, the creeper comes up to my desk, and I'm like freaking out, like, okay, I'm trying to wrap up the show. But the joke is that we are the same as everyone that's watching YouTube, and we also hate it when YouTubers are like, don't forget to like and subscribe. So the idea is, and you'll see this every single time at the end of the show, I say, don't forget to like and then something happens. So I never get the words out. So I'm not permitted to say it. And so the death occurs there. So in that first episode, the creeper, of course, blew up. My desk flies at the camera. The camera rattles and flies back and hits the wall. And then what's even better is that you see my torso flying toward the camera at full speed. And if you pause it, you see the look on my face. I'm like, and then you just hear a splat and the episode's over. So
super creative. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Fun way to end your videos.
It's just a heck of a lot of fun.
Gotta find ways to spice it up, because it's
especially after doing it for like 15 or 16 seasons.
Yeah, we got to do something fresh.
Find fun.
I mean,
fun things
who else is doing that?
Yeah, I love it.
What's life if we don't do the fun parts?
But the whole show is in the tech ed space. So it's about learning about new technology, learning about the things that are available, and teaching. I'm a teacher at heart and want to teach tech, and that's what I do. Pretty good at explaining things that are technical at a level that the viewers are able to comprehend and understand. And so it's really a good I guess format for us. It's doing quite well as far as like our growth curve, and people seem to be really enjoying the show.
Yeah, I really enjoyed all the episodes that I watched.
Thank you.
Definitely encourage everyone to go check out Category5 Technology
Subscribe.
TV.
Don't forget to like and
content.
Like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, by the way. But
and
really,
since you're here on Cloud Underground's channel, you should give us a like and subscribe first here.
Definitely.
Especially if you're one of those tinker types and you like to geek around with stuff and play with tools. Priorities.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing some really cool stuff. Like the through the pandemic it was hard, right? Like getting shows out, it was really difficult. And I'm keeping the lights on in the studio, and it was very, very difficult. So season 15, so we used to do one episode a week, and season 15 went down. We're still working on finishing our third episode for the season, and then the season is over. So season 16, we're planning to do 12 episodes. And so that's our goal. It's our target. And so we've got a lot of great content to come, and it's going to be a blast.
I'm ready for it.
Awesome.
We'll be there. Hopefully everyone else watching is there with us.
I'll be there.
So Robbie, what else can we look forward to from you and NEMS, or anything else you want to talk to us about while we're all here? Well,
with NEMS, I mean, NEMS being the, kind of what we're on about today, but NEMS is, because of the nature of it, it is like my vision of what a monitoring service should be. I'm just constantly throwing new features at it and making it fun for users, making it easier. So it's always just an evolution. So just, give it a try, see what you think of it. And you're going to find that as I evolve the product, you're just going to fall even more in love with it because it just gets better and better. And the neat thing about 1.6 is that it's DPKG based. So we have our own apt repositories. So all updates are pushed through apt updates. And so that just makes it so easy to get your operating system up to date, your NEMS server up to date. So there's going to be a lot coming through this release cycle. Like I'm always working on it. So, but as far as other projects go, like that's really, I mean, I only have so much time in the day, right? And so I have had to find the ones that I'm most passionate about. And, I encourage other makers out there, find the stuff that you love. If you're trying to become a YouTuber, if you're trying to become a maker, like just dedicate time to it. Just fall in love with it and just focus on it, and never get discouraged when you suck at something, because that's the first step to learning how to do it, is to start and figure it out and fry a couple of SBCs and work your way up. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that totally touches advice. My last question is like your thoughts on those new people coming in. So you've already been getting it. Yes, break something. So yeah, I guess absolutely. I guess what are your closing thoughts on, like, for someone who is one of those tinker types and they have the passion, they're going to go build community. They already know that they're probably not going to get paid for everything they do, but you can't stop some people. I know that we're those types. I know that you're that type. What are your other, I guess, final like recommendations for those who are creators?
I think it's important just to be real. And what I mean by that is not just on a personal level, but with yourself, like not just with other people, but internally, just be real with yourself. The way that I'm able to do all the things that I'm able to do, the way I'm able to bring out things like NEMS is I just don't let things discourage me. Like I just went through, when I announced 1.6, all of a sudden there's this global pandemic. And I had to shut down my studio. I had to move the studio to a new space. My rent doubled. And all these kinds of things happen. And it's like, okay, well, I kept telling the patrons, oh, I'm going to have it out in 2 months. Oh, sorry, I didn't have it out. I'm going to have it out in another 2 months, until finally I'm like, guys, I'm going to have it out someday.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best. I'm working on it. I try to be open with my community as best as I can. It's really hard to articulate the fact that, hey, this is a boatload of work. I'm doing it all by myself, and definitely. I will not ever get discouraged. It's all about, hey, I want to bring this out. I want to give this to the community, and I want it to be good enough that it's worthy of the community. So it's like, just never let your mindset discourage you. Like I have to work full time elsewhere when I'm doing all these projects. I don't work for Category 5. I don't work for NEMS full time. It's all part-time gigs on the side. And one day that's the dream, but still I have to hold down a job to pay for my wife and kids and and take care of what needs to be taken care of. And
definitely.
So
I think a lot of people can definitely relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're all labor of love and
labors
of love and side projects, and we do what we have to do to make it work.
So I'm not really the best guy to give advice, because that's where I'm at, right? But I think I'm onto something when I say, just focus on the things that you're passionate about and that you love. So I don't have a lot of more. I used to be a singer, and I don't sing anymore, and that that's that was a sacrifice to give up on that, because that was a lifelong dream, but hey, I can only do so much. And so I had to make the decision that there's other things I'd rather focus my time on. And maybe there's things in your life that you have to give up in order to pursue the things that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, there's only so many hours in a day. So
it's true. You kind of have to prioritize and decide what you want. And we're not running around with the millions or anything. One day is maybe one.
Not yet.
One day.
One day.
So, Robbie, where can people find all of your stuff? Where can we find NEMS? Where can we find Pinecraft?
Category5.tv is the show. Or just go onto YouTube and search for Category5 Technology TV. That's probably the best. I mean, whatever. Everything's on YouTube now. But NEMSLinux.com is the hub for NEMS. Of course, the enterprise services, you can find them they're on the download menu. I'm going to make it more clear what's enterprise and what's free because some people are confused by that. So I'm going to differentiate those in the coming weeks. And then Pinecraft is on GitHub. So it's, you ready for this? github.com/cat5tv/Pinecraft. Or, of course, you could probably search for Pinecraft server in Google or on YouTube.
Yeah. We'll also have links to all of these things in the description of the video.
So brilliant.
It'll be really
well, then just click the links below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Have fun with it. Don't forget the fun part. If you've forgotten that, then you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. Oh, you just reminded me of yet another venture. Sorry, Laura, I forgot. And I should mention, but I also teach video production techniques.
Yes.
The show.
Yes, the show.
Check out the show.
Again, it's just a labor of love, but it's a side project that when we're in between producing episodes of Category 5 TV, I teach the things that I learned. So I create short little videos that teach how did I do that visual effect or and it's really cool, and it's getting really rave reviews from the viewers. People are loving it, so check that out. It's just called The Show on YouTube, and it seems like it's being really well received by the viewers. So I hope you'll enjoy that too.
Yeah, lots of great tips there.
Absolutely.
So go check
out
that
the
out as well. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Robbie. We really appreciate you taking
Laura.
the time. We're really excited about NEMS 1.6 Everyone
we
should
just
go check it
appreciate
out.
all the work because since I build things too, and you're right, it's like there are those long building periods. People are like, "Hey, when's this thing coming?"
Yeah, is this project still active?
Yeah, so I
just spent 40 hours working on this in my free time just this week alone. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. Cool.
So worth it.
Thanks again to Robbie for sitting down with Nato and I, and thanks to you for watching this episode of the Cloud Underground podcast. If you did enjoy this interview, definitely give us a thumbs up and subscribe so that you can catch future episodes of the Cloud Underground podcast. I'm hoping to do a lot more interviews like this, so hit the bell so that you can get reminded every time we put out new content. And we'll see you next time.